awesome. Now, as we mentioned earlier, Troop in the Color would have been this past Saturday, but because of COVID-19, we're missing out on one of our favorite royal events of the year. So instead, we've asked you to come share a few of your favorite Troop in the Color moments from years past. These can be highlights, images, trivia, whatever you like, basically a list of your favorite things about the event. And you've got 7 of them, is that right?
That's right, and I cannot wait to go through them.
Great, but first I want to talk about the event itself. Troop in the Color is a 270-year-old, or 272-year-old to be exact, ceremony held on the second Saturday of June to celebrate the monarch's birthday, but it's not actually Queen Elizabeth's birthday. That was back on April 21st. So Michelle, tell us, why does the Queen get 2 birthdays?
Well, I mean, obvious starting point. She's the queen, so I think we can just hand it to any monarch. The monarch wants 2 birthdays. The monarch gets 2 birthdays. But there is a historical precedent for it. It actually began in 1748 under King George II, and the reasoning was that his actual birthday was in November, but we all know, I know you know better than any, that the weather in November in London would be what, not ideal birthday party weather?
Not great, not great.
Right, so he instead decided, okay, I'm gonna have this military parade procession in the lovely springtime, which is why we now have this double celebration, weather reasons.
Okay, now today, what does the event entail? Because most of us think of those iconic images of the royal family standing together on the palace balcony, but there's a lot more than a photo op, right? Last year's ceremony lasted 2.5 hours. So what all goes on?
Yeah, there's quite a bit involved in Trooping the Color, starting with the Queen's own military involvement. Many people might not realize that the Queen is considered the colonel-in-chief of the 5 foot guard troops, and those are the troops that serve the sovereign, that's the Queen, directly. So she has her own military title, which is kind of, again, this is a military parade that we're watching. And as you said, Sharon, it does have quite a few steps, and it begins with the Queen going from Buckingham Palace along the Mall to Horse Guards Parade. And that's an area that's inside St. James's Park. And when the Queen is in there, she's meeting with the troops. And in fact, she used to do that part of the parade on horseback herself. But since 1987, she has done it in a carriage. So after the Queen visits Horse Guards Parade, she then does a military salute, inspects the troops, and then rides back to Buckingham Palace at the head of all the soldiers. She then is joined by the rest of the royal family, and this is the moment you mentioned, the iconic moment on the Buckingham Palace balcony, where we see all the key members of the royal family all gathered on the balcony for what is known as the fly past. And if you've seen it before, you may remember that this is when they all look up, right, at that one key moment. We get to see, the bottoms of everyone's royal chins, and it's a really spectacular moment. And what makes this moment so special is that it's kind of a de facto royal family portrait that we can count on once a year, where we get to see all the cousins, the brothers, the fathers, it's all the generations, right? So Prince Philip, Prince Charles, his brothers, obviously William and Harry and their wives, and the children, which is really special because it's so rare that we get to see the royal children and especially get to see them interacting this way. So it's kind of the closest we get to a public royal family reunion. So it makes it really fun.
Wow, Michelle, hearing you break it all down makes me miss it even more. All right, now let's dive into your 7 favorite things, shall we? What's first?
So first up is Prince George's Trooping the Color balcony debut. And we had been filled with anticipation to see George on the balcony for the first time. Obviously, he was the first royal heir born in a generation, and this was a big moment. And it didn't disappoint, because to make his balcony debut, George wore the same exact outfit that his dad, Prince William, wore in his own Trooping the Color balcony debut. So it was a really nostalgic and sentimental throwback to William's own first moment on the balcony, for trooping. And in fact, they did the same thing again, William and Kate, in a subsequent trooping with little George, dressing George again in a throwback outfit worn by William. And this time it was an outfit that William had worn to his brother Harry's christening. So these are very deliberate style choices, even in a little baby, which you have to appreciate. And just to, I think, reinforce the connectivity between the royal generations and kind of enhance the meaning of this moment.
So cute. All right, what's next?
So next is, in fact, George's same appearance, but rather than focusing on what George was wearing, I want to talk about what we saw on the balcony when George first made his debut, and that was 3 generations of royal heirs in one place, because we know how much Queen Elizabeth prizes, the continuation of her line. And that was the moment that we got to see it from her, then her direct heir, Prince Charles, his direct heir, Prince William, and then new baby George, who was just 22 months old at the time. We're always excited anytime we get to see the heirs assembled, like heirs assemble in public. And this was really the first true look at all of them together.
Wow, an iconic moment for sure. What's another?
The next moment is the fact that Trooping the Color gives royal fans a chance to see new royal moms for the first time, often while they're still on maternity leave. So in the case of Princess Kate, it was the first time we got to see her after the birth of Princess Charlotte back in 2015. And then more recently, last year, we got to see Meghan for the first time while she was still on maternity leave after the birth of Archie. And, again, to see royal moms on maternity leave at a time when they would otherwise be, really squarely out of the spotlight, I think it's pretty clear to see that the only thing that would draw them out is RSVPing for the Queen's birthday party.
No excuse for missing that one, that's for sure. What's next, Michelle?
Next up is the first appearance of Prince Edward. Now, Prince Edward is the Queen's youngest son. She has 4 children. He's her 3rd son and youngest. And at the time, what's worth keeping in mind is that the Queen had all 4 of her children at home births. I mean, granted, it was a, palace castle birth, but it was at home. So where royals fans had gotten accustomed to seeing later generations, Diana and Kate walking out onto the steps of the Lindo wing with their newborn baby, at the time, royals fans had not had that kind of big moment. So Prince Edward making his debut on the balcony was his first introduction to the public.
So adorable. Okay, give us another.
So next up is Princess Diana's Trooping the Color debut. We couldn't do a roundup of highlights from Trooping the Color without mentioning Diana, of course. And what was so interesting about her debut is that it actually came before her wedding to Prince Charles, about a month before. And at the time, there was this so-called no ring, no bring policy, which meant that if you weren't already married to a royal family member, you weren't invited to trooping. But in fact, Diana was invited, and she rode in a carriage alongside Prince Andrew, Charles's brother. And the reason that she was with Andrew and not Charles, her husband-to-be, is because Charles rides on horseback during Trooping the Color. But I want to note that although it was Diana's first appearance at trooping, that actually wasn't the most remarkable moment from that trooping. In fact, this is the trooping when a troubled young teenager, a young man, shot blanks at Queen Elizabeth while she was on horseback. This is back when she rode on horseback. And a lot of people today reflect on her unflinching steeliness as, that being kind of the pinnacle example of that, because the Queen literally does not miss a step on her horse as after someone fires what she didn't know, what they were at the time, and carried on with the rest of the parade. So when you see her on the balcony with Diana, this is after she's been fired at. So
wow,
it's pretty remarkable and impressive.
Keeping calm and carrying on, as always.
Exactly.
Scary stuff. Okay, what's next?
Okay, next up is a special accessory that the queen wears at every trooping. Now, there has only been one prior trooping, except for this year, of course, that was ever canceled, and that was in 1955. And there was a strike going on at the time, so they called it off. But every other year that the queen has been in attendance at trooping, she wears a brooch, which is known as the Brigade of Guards brooch. And as we know, the queen assigns a lot of symbolism and meaning to the accessory she chooses. And in this case, that brooch symbolizes the 5 regiments of the British and Commonwealth armies. And those are the regiments that take turns each year trooping their colors, which we said are their flags, for the queen. And in fact, those 5 symbols are enclosed in this oval frame. If you're able to ever get up close with a good look at it, it has a Latin phrase which translates to 5 joined as one. And it originally belonged to the queen's grandmother, Queen Mary, which is, again, one of those perks of being queen. You get Queen Mary's jewelry.
All right, Michelle, what's last on your list?
Last on my list is the annual sort of wait and see about where everyone is going to be positioned on the balcony. So I guess you could sort of think of this like the ultimate dinner party table, like where everyone's looking where are the name cards, who's sitting closest to the head of the table, who's farthest, all that kind of thing. And there is some meaning attached to how you see the people on the balcony, the family members arranged. Obviously, the Queen and Prince Philip are centered in the middle of the balcony, and you tend to see the direct heirs positioned most closely to the Queen. So that would be Prince Charles, of course, Prince William, obviously, and Prince George. You also see the children in front. That makes sense. We want them to be able to, have an open view of everything, and fans to have a view of them. And there have been so many amazing moments. I have to mention the moment when little Susanna Phillips was scolding Prince George for sort of like, I don't know, being out of line. But it was just one of those candid moments that if we don't have the children's up front, we don't get to see. So it's fun to see those spontaneous moments, of course. And then last year, there was a lot of speculation about why Prince Harry and Meghan Markle were positioned in the back, toward the back of the balcony. And in fact, they were standing really close to the Queen, but behind. And again, that's something we can expect because Harry is not a direct heir.
No slight there, it's just the way it works.
Exactly.